we're back. So, like we said at the top of the episode, Death Zone is a book full of awesome stuff, and we kind of went for the shiniest, which was the best way to play Blood Bowl, which is Blood Bowl 7s, and then the best thing to have on a Blood Bowl pitch, which is obviously a giant. But in there is a bunch of really useful inducements that tournaments are starting to allow. So Milton kind of raised this by looking at some of the additional inducements that were allowed at Sand Bowl. And there's some stuff in there that you might want to know about if you're running in a league or if you're going to a tournament that does allow it. So it kind of made sense to spend a little bit of time having a look at the infamous coaching staff available. Now, it's difficult. When it comes to infamous coaching staff, technically that includes wizards, but we're not going to look at wizards. We're not going to look at extra stuff. We are literally going to look at, pages 15 through to 21 in Death Zone 2020. So if you open your books to page 15, and we'll begin talking.
We will begin.
So what we're going to do is we're just going to talk about the inducements and kind of just go around and say, like, is this going to be useful? Is this garbage? Is this worthwhile? When could we see this being comboed? Because I haven't really read through these until this week. Like, there's a couple there that I thought were really cool, but I think there's a couple that are really good fun here. So can I get rid of that? Present. Oh, I can. Magic. Good job. Okay. So first one is Carrie Cold Steel. Elven Kingdoms, Lustrian Super League, Old World Classic, or World's Edge Super League. So basically everybody except Chaos and Undead. Literally everybody here. Oh, no. Chaos, Undead, and Greenskins, basically. So Carrie is 50. Oh, that doesn't work. Presenting doesn't work because all it does is just flick the page down. That's aggravating. There we go. Right, I'm going to skip the gumph. So Carrie counts as 2 temp agency cheerleaders. So 50k counts as 2 temp agency cheerleaders. In addition, if her team cannot set up 11 players at the start of a drive, Carrie may decide to show them how it's done. Her team's coach can choose to set her up as part of the team. If they do so, she counts as part of the team for the duration of the drive and no longer counts as 2 temp agency cheerleaders. When the drive ends, Carrie is sent off. You cannot argue the call or use a bribe. She will play no further act in the game and doesn't count as cheerleaders at that. And she basically comes on. So if you're down to below 11 players, you can choose to deploy her. She's moving 6, strength 2, edge 3+, passing 5+, armor 8+, block, dauntless, frenzy, loner 4+. So guys, for 50k you get 2 cheerleaders, right? Temp cheerleaders 20k a piece, so that's 10k more. You don't really tend to buy cheerleaders in this new edition because they don't really do stuff except for prayers to Nuffle. Is that right? Yeah, because assistant coach is the reroll, isn't it? So yeah. And you can deploy a person who is a strength 2 block dauntless frenzy piece. What do we reckon?
I'm going to start off with like kind of prefacing this segment with just like this is going to be tricky because we're always going to compare it to like things you can get like star players, which are like always going to be better. So in this kind of like framing where we take coaching staff as like in a vacuum, just because I think that's going to like change how I feel about these things. Because in a vacuum,
also I think that the value of them is quite important as well, because they're almost in that sweet spot of what else could I do with it, or I think a lot of it is would I have the coaching staff or would I have a keg?
Yeah, that's pretty much always going to be the question, isn't it?
Yeah, that is a massive one. So yeah, it's a really fair shout, Ben. But there will be times where I think they can kind of combo a bit. So, you buy your star player and you've got 50k left over. And like Trip says, do you want a keg or do you want Carrie who counts as one of your starting at 11? So you kind of get a free player?
Yeah, that is true. I think for her value, she's pretty great. Like, having an emergency block dauntless player is cool. It's just that 50k to essentially not do anything unless things go horribly wrong. That's where it becomes a little bit.
that it could be exactly the same description of a keg.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That is true, actually. Yeah,
and that the whole counts as 2 temp cheerleaders. That's nice, but it's
It does mean nothing. If she was an
Yeah,
assistant
if you need to know.
coach, then this would be excellent. If she was 2 assistant coaches and then at some point she comes on, she'd basically just be a cheap version of Joseph Buckman.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of archetype. So this is a weird one to think about. I actually like this one a lot because it is in that 50k, like, I've got nothing else to spend. Am I going to take a keg, or am I likely to drop down to 11 players and then get 1 drive with a strength 2 block piece? It's not a great player, but it is somebody that you do not care about in the slightest, who does have block that you can put on the line. And that's one of your players that doesn't need to go on the line. And if you're running an elf team, you are likely to have a little bit of inducements, but not enough to buy a star player, because elves have got stitched with star players, essentially. That's not fair, actually. They've just got one good one. I think this is really useful, and I think this is exactly why we're doing this segment, is because there's going to be stuff in here that no one's thought about running, or no one's really considered, because it's in that other book, and most of that book is not legal in tournaments, so we don't worry about it. So 50k for Carrie Cold Steel. If you drop below 11 players, you get a strength 2 block dude for a drive. It's not great. It feels like a special play card or a roll to nuffle, but it's not bad. I'm going to give this one a C+. You know, I think it's okay. I think you got a little bit of money. Would you run it in a tournament?
No, there's stakes in a tournament. 50k goes a long way.
That's incredibly accurate, actually.
Yeah.
But for a league, I think that's actually really worth considering, and it can be taken by an absolute ton of teams. Right, next up, Popper Skullbones, 80,000, available to any team with Favoured of or Underworld Challenge. So all the Chaos teams, your Norse team, Trips, and Underworld teams. So that's doesn't include Black Orcs, does it? That's Goblins, Snotlings, Underworld, and Skaven, I think. Okay, right. So 80k. We are a little bit more on the expensive side now. But this is quite an interesting one. So at the start of each drive, after the teams have been set up, but before the kickoff. So you set up your guys. Papa Skullbones can then attempt to bless one player on his team that is not a mercenary or star player with the power of Chaos Gods. Choose a player from the team who's on the pitch and roll a d8. So this is every drive. This is not just once per game. This is every single time you set up, you pick a dude and you roll a d8. Any skills gained are kept until the end of the drive. If the player has both skills, that doesn't work. A player cannot be chosen if the roll has already been made for them during the game. Right, D8. Roll a 1. Player is immediately removed from player and placed in the KO. So you deploy your guys. You go, I'm going to give this guy some Warp Stone, and on a 1, he's KO'd. On a 2, nothing happens. Oh, no, it does. Nothing happens to that player.
Yeah, nothing happens to your player.
Yeah.
But
randomly select another player from the same team, excluding players not on the pitch and players for whom a roll on this table has already been made, and roll again. All right, so that's not bad. Can be good, can be bad. Like, you can be like, cool, yep, I'm going to pick this goblin to get random skills, and then it rolls roll a 2, and now my rat ogre is now mutated. 3, big hand and very long legs. Okay, that's a bit of a nothing one. Big hand is pretty useful. Number 4 is Tentacles and Prehensile Tail. Number 5 is Disturbing Presence and Foul Appearance. Number 6, Extra Arms and 2 Heads, the Hack Phlegm combo. Number 7, Claws and Horns. And number 8, the player gains 2 skills of your choice chosen from the mutations category. So you're paying 80k. Each drive, one of your players rolls on this table. They can get a couple of mutations, basically. What do we think?
I think for 80k, that's going to be a great bit of fun at the start of every drive. You're going to be like, please don't roll a 1, please don't roll a 1, please don't roll a 1. But otherwise, I mean, you roll any of those, and yeah, some of them aren't potentially going to be great if you put it on the wrong player. But that's really adding a bit of thematic to a mutating team that literally is changing every drive.
I think that's where I feel with this as well, where it's kind of like I don't think I'd ever been in a position where I'm just like, I'm going to pay 80k for this, but like the rule of this is super fun, and this would make a really, really cool league.
Really cool
When
league,
this was
really
always
cool
the case.
stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Paying 80k for it is a bit of it's quite an investment, especially because I think Underworld Challenge does actually get access to Fungus the Loon, who is 80k,
Yeah.
and Bomber, who's 50k, and it's like
I'll
that.
take them over this.
That's gonna, yeah, and I think that's probably gonna be the thing that we struggle with in this, is when it gets to those cheap star players, because this is super fun and there's gonna be some great combos that happen and it's gonna be really funny, but it's not gonna help you win. I think,
But it is going to stay for the whole game. I mean, you may have a couple of drives.
It's the the power is the end of the game. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, the powers for the every drive you're going to have some influence of it. So I sort of look at it and go, you've got a 5 in 8 chance of having 2 mutating skills on a player that you pick for a drive. Yeah. I'd take that at the start of a game.
All right, I look forward to the Norse team rolling out Papa Skullbones.
This is maybe influencing my thematic pick for my Norse team.
Next up, we've got Galindra Silverwater. This is Elven Kingdoms only. A whole bunch of fluff. Okay, each
absolutely gorgeous dude, isn't he?
I assume that's
what an
him.
Adonis.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like the flying squirrel in the artwork as well.
Yeah. Didn't even see that. I thought it was like a leaf.
Each time Galandril's team rolls cheering fans on the kickoff event table, add D3 to the number of cheerleaders this team has. If this team does not have any cheerleaders, it counts as having 1. In addition, each time Galandril's team makes a roll on the press to Nuffle table, if it's a 15, 16, or an 8 in an exhibition match, the team gets a free reroll. 40k, and you get D3 cheerleaders when cheering fans comes up. Now, cheering fans is now the 7 roll, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
it comes up a bit more.
1 in 6 kickoffs, this is going to flag up, and it's going to give you plus D3 cheering fans. And if you roll that, well, basically, and 1 in 8 of those is going to give you a reroll straight away. So 1 in 48 times, you're going to get a reroll. Let's say it's elf, so let's say there's 4 drives a game. So 1 in 12 games, this is going to give you a reroll. The rest of the time, it's just going to help you win cheering fans, which gives you a prayer to Nuffle. I get it. It's clever, but for 40k, you could just buy 2 cheering fans. Like, buy 2 cheerleaders. Now, if you don't have any cheerleaders, it counts as having 1, and then you add D3. So technically, it's better in that regard. And you do get the potential rebate of a reroll if you 1 in 8 it. I'd rather take a weather mage at like 30k. If I've got money that I'm just doing nothing with, then a weather mage I think is going to be better than winning the prayers to Nuffle table. And full disclosure, I kind of don't. I hate rolling prayers to Nuffle. Ben, we were playing 7s, and it was like, it's the prayers to Nuffle table. I think we actually skipped it, didn't we?
I think we did. Yeah, we couldn't be bothered.
So, like, I really don't care. Like, I don't care who gets knuckle dusters. All right, I'm not a fan of Galandrill. I think you can kind of overlook that guy.
Yeah, I can't see you reaching for it unless you really like. I don't want to do anything else with 40k. I'll just do it for a bit of fun. But I couldn't see you ever planning on doing it.
I'd just take 2 assistant coaches at that point, or a weather mage. At least you're going to get some edge at that point. Okie dokie. Next one is Crotch Snakewhisker. Underworld teams. So once per game, during step 2 of the end drive sequence, Crotch can experiment on a player who has been removed from play as a casualty. Okay, I like this. So 70k at the end of the drive, a player that's been removed as a casualty, even if they're dead, you roll this for them. Okay, so I like the sequencing of this so far. So one of the worst things, I think you guys would agree, is when you've got an apothecary and you don't pop the apothecary because you're like, I want to save him, and then you kind of regret it later on. You're like, I kind of wish I'd had used the apothecary on that lineman because of this reason here. So you pick a dude who's been casualtied, doesn't matter when, doesn't matter how badly casualtied, and you roll a d6 once per game. On a 1, they die. Right? No. The player's condition has worsened. The coach of the opposing team rolls on the casualty table to determine exactly what's happened. The result of this roll is applied immediately in addition to any other casualty table results. Multiple missed next games don't count. Okay, fine. So if you get a badly hurt dude and you roll a 1, your opponent then rolls on the injury table again, the casualty table again, that's not the worst, okay? That's really not the worst. 2 to 3, they remain casualtied. 4 to 5, they get put in the reserves box and they gain really stupid for the next drive. If they already have really stupid, they get really stupid 5+. At the end of that drive, the player is returned to the casualty box where everything carries on. And then on a 6, the player is returned to the reserves box and can be set up. At the end of this drive, the player is returned to the casualty box where the effects of the casualty roll were made normal. So basically, 70k, you can pick a guy out of your casualty box at the end of a drive and roll a dice. On a 4+, you get him back for the drive. He may be stupid. He's probably going to be stupid. You're really looking for a 6, and it's only one drive, isn't it?
It's basically, yeah, like a stunted apothecary, right? So is it apothecary 100k for the game?
Yeah.
This
is the worst 30k you will ever earn.
Yeah.
Yeah, is this better than trying to save or trying to get 100k of a proper apothecary? It really is a cheap apothecary in both value and ability.
So it's, 50-50 to just, and even on the good 50-50, like even on the good half of it,
yeah,
they only last for a drive and they're stupid.
How much is a mercenary more than base? Is it 20 or 30k? Can you remember?
I think it's 20.
I think it's 20 as well. If it's 20, then basically every team with the Underworld Challenge, instead of paying 70k, can just take a mercenary lineman on their team. Like, there's going to be a bunch of teams like, Underworld and Goblins and things like that. They can just take like a mercenary goblin and have them there. And I think at that point, if you've got the cash to buy a merc and you don't want to do anything else with that money, which is very challenging because for 70k you can get Bomber, and I think we're going to say that a couple of times in this episode. For 80k you can get Fungus, and that's always going to do stuff. Like, they're always going to do stuff. Like, you will always get Bomber for at least one drive. With this guy, you may 1 in 6 times get your guy back for a drive. Yeah, I don't know.
Hear me out. With this guy, I'm going to go in again, as in, like, rather than treating this so much as something, will you or will you not get it? Take it from a different lens. You're in a different lens. This could be really cool to, in a league, everyone starts with an apothecary, but they're a trainee, and you use this table, but it's like, you basically, everything comes down. So on a 6, they do flawed execution, and then you kind of tear it up, and every time they successfully do something, it gets a bit better and a bit better until they become an apothecary. So it's a way for every team to have a free apothecary and level up a player.
I like that
as part of the team. I think that could be quite fun. And
do that with this, and then that's a really good way to get this in the game.
Yeah,
I would take this if it was every time someone got casualtied you could roll.
Yeah,
that would be great.
So it's like an apothecary, but it's worse, but you can do it lots rather than just the one.
So Goblin died, but he's coming back for a drive. All right, that's all right. That's okay. That would be actually that would be pretty good. Then you kind of got
the rushed procedure, rushed medical procedure.
Magic sponge. Although there is actually a magic sponge now. Okay, the next one up is an interesting one. This is Eileen Andar. So available to any team and is 100k. So this one's a little bit convoluted, kind of. If your team took on any journeyman during step 3 of the pre-game sequence, Eileen will ensure that they are the best and are all eager to impress. Roll a d6, applying a -1 modifier for each journeyman. So if you take one journeyman, you roll a d6 and -1 from it. Which is interesting. For each journeyman taken on. Okay.
Yeah, so if you got 5 journeymen, this is not the coach that you want to be taking.
Okay, I have a question about this then. Anyway, on a roll of a 1 or less, the journeyman is a team player and they are a But they don't show any particular talent. The journeyman loses loner 4+. Okay, so you're paying 100k, and you're buying a journeyman. On a roll of a 1, the journeyman doesn't get loner. On a roll of a 2 to 5, the journeyman has some potential. The journeyman gains a single randomly selected skill from one of their primary skill categories. On a roll of a 6, Eileen has produced a player with real star quality. The journeyman gains 2 randomly selected skills from one of their primary categories. Each journeyman counts towards CTV as normal. Their value does not increase for any skills they may have. Journeyman provided by Eileen may be permanently hired during step 4 of the post-game sequence as normal, but doing so will cost an additional 10k per skill. This is spendy, right? You need to have a journeyman, and you actually, that's quite funny. Doing this with riotous rookies might actually be quite an entertaining way to do it. On a roll of 2 to 5, they get a random skill, right? So actually, that's genius. That's really funny. You take riotous rookies, you roll a dice, you then roll a dice for each of them. Basically, you're fishing for like 5 or 6s. Every 5 or 6 you roll, that Jack Noblar starts with a random.
Yeah.
Do they count as journeymen, riotous rookies?
I don't know. Probably not. Like that.
I was gonna say, like strictly rules as written with this work. Or...
My concern with the rules as written is roll a d6, applying for a -1 modifier for each journeyman taken on. On a roll of a 6.
It is if your team took on any journeyman during step 3 of the pre-game sequence, which I don't think is when riotous rookies takes place, right?
No, I think you're right. I think that's actual like journeyman.
Yeah.
But how do you roll a 6 then? If you're -1 for at least one journeyman.
That's a very good point. Maybe that should be it if it's a natural 6.
Yeah.
Because if it's a natural 6, then it's going to be quite good.
Or for each journeyman after the first.
I imagine that's probably what I meant to say. Yeah.
For each additional journeyman taken on, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, the point is here. If this is an inducement you can take on Blood Bowl 3, I'm gonna farm this. Because you kind of can, and the way that petty cash works in Blood Bowl 2020 is different than it used to, right? You can just use your cash to buy stuff, and it doesn't actually influence team value. So you can just be like, right, okay, I kind of want to. I've got enough cash in the kitty so that I can buy a Skaven rat, and on a 2 to 5, they're going to get a random. This is wicked. Like, I get him, he's a journeyman, and if I like the skill and he survives the game, I'm going to buy him for 10k more. I think this is a really clever way to kind of give you an angle to get permanent benefits, but you've got to suck it up for a game.
It's a pretty cool catch-up mechanic.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. I wonder if
I think if you used it right and wanted to take on journeyman at the end, this could be a really good way to try and go from having been quite inducement rich to in a reasonably good squad place.
Yeah, I like it. I think this is a good one. Now, you are looking at... Oh, no, guys, this is journeyman, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is when you've got nobody. So this is when your dead dudes come on. So if you're running an elf team, you will have journeyman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is great. I like this.
Skilled up elves that don't cost any more.
Yeah, this is really interesting.
And then you can permanently hire them for 10k without the extra cost.
If you get a good
insane.
skill. If you get a good skill.
Yeah, but you're likely to with elves.
Yeah, I mean, you can take
You're likely to get something or general agility on their journeyman.
I'm thinking every lineman with a random general, right? Block, dauntless, wrestle, kick, sure hands.
And the odd frenzy can be handy.
Frenzy is great. Yeah, it's basically just shadowing. Cheers, trumpets. Shadowing is the only skill you don't want, and especially on a snotling. So I think it is not cheap, right? It's definitely not free. But if you're down 100k in a league match, and actually, you've got a few journeymen, just go for it. You might roll a couple of cool random journeymen that can really help your team out.
I think it's pretty cool for like goblins as well. Might be a really good way to get cheap sneaky gets and things.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. All right,
And
that's cool.
And the chances are that you're definitely going to improve your team for the entire game. So it's not a little bit of an improvement. You potentially two or three journeymen might actually.
Worst case scenario, your journeymen don't have loner. Like that's the worst case scenario here, which I think is excellent. The journeyman loses loner.
I wasn't sold on this, but after talking it through, this is actually pretty cool. And I think this is the first one that's come up where I would say I would actually take this in goblins. I think I would actually take this.
It depends on
goblins,
how many journeymen, obviously, but like,
yeah. I mean, snotlings, you could have a bunch of them, and they die.
They do die. They do.
You
die.
could
I think
get
it's cool.
So many that just start off with skills that are free.
It might be actually quite fun to start a league with goblins. Fire all of your goblins.
Yeah, I think goblins get the most use out of this because I think when they're only 10k more to hire, that's less of a sting than it is for each snotling.
So take 11 goblins on the 11 roster, fire 3 straight away. Start your game with 3 journey goblins. Pay the 100k to get this, and that's a 4, 5, or 6 to give them for them starting with a random primary. Like that's all right. That's going to be 2 goblins basically that start with a random primary. Now that is definitely not going to win a particularly huge amount, but it is going to be a lot of fun, and that's what you're looking for. So I like that one. I think that's pretty cool. Next up is Professor Franklenheim. This is Sylvanian Spotlight only, 130k. Okay, so we're in wizard territory now. But I love this one so much. During the pre-game sequence, after step 4, but before step 5, I'm just having like Magic the Gathering flashbacks a lot of the time. Okay,
before the second end phase.
Yeah, exactly. Randomly select D3 players. So pre-game D3 players. Could be 1, could be 3. These players have been modified by the Professor. Until the end of the game, each selected player gains a single random mutation skill. However, at the start of step 3 of the post-game sequence, roll a d6 for each of these players unless they suffered and did not recover from a casualty table result of dead. On a roll of a 1, the experiment proves a bit of a failure. The player immediately loses the skill and must miss the next game. Okay. On a 2 to 5, they lose the skill. On a 6, they retain the skill, do not have to pay any SPP, but they do. Their value does go up though.
Team value goes up,
yeah. All right. So 130k. D3 players, and do you choose them? Randomly select D3 players.
Yeah.
Who will get a random mutation on a 6 at the end of the game? They get to keep it.
So much random for 130k. Like this would be the worst double one when it's like one player gets and then rolls a 1.
So I've got to put a shout out to Gary, who has got a claw vampire in his league, because the clawed vampire rolled a claw and kept it due to Franklenheim.
Really?
Yeah, I know it's best case scenario mentality, but dude, he's now got a claw vampire.
That's actually pretty sick.
I know. This is great. And I really like some of these inducements that actually have a chance to affect your team permanently. It's a gamble, right? But if you went into a game and you were like, right, give me 100k, and at the end of the game, one of your team will get a random primary. Well, I'd pay that every game, like in a league, basically. And I know that this is 130k, and there's only a 1 in 6 chance, and it's D3 random players. So, realistic case, let's say 2 zombies get a random mutation. But if my zombie gets a random mutation and keeps it, that's wicked. I'm keeping that, dude.
Yeah.
Is it better than a wizard though?
I'm only happy with this if you roll that 6. Like, if any of them get the 6, that's awesome. Gets a free skill.
Yeah.
But like,
realistically, you're going to end up. Yeah. You're going to pay 130k for one very long leg zombie.
Yeah.
And then we both did it in our like this live stream game. Ben, we're just like, oh, we just need to roll a 6. Oh, we'll do that.
Yeah, that
And
was
then we
great.
both managed to pull that off, but I don't think it works every time.
Saxby could do it, but I think that would be about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it is going to be one of those that the majority of times your best thing is I got a skill that I used once in the game, and every once in a while it's going to be someone rolled 6s and go, well, I went from buying a coaching staff to having 3 skilled up players with the skill that I wanted. And we're like, well, someone rolled 6s.
There's I still don't think that's as bad as like when a team randomly rolls a strength up. Like that just was not fun to play against. Like, oh, game 1 and they got a random strength. Now there's a strength for Dwarf Runner, and you're like, oh, for God's sake.
Yeah.
You know, if I was playing against an undead team and they had 2 claw zombies or 2 claw flesh golems, I would be like, that is cool. Like, that is cool. I think there's nothing there that's just horrifically bad, and I think that's because Mighty Blow doesn't stack with Claw the same way. I think maybe a Horns Werewolf would be problematic, but also very cool. Because I don't know. I like this one. 130k is very spendy, but hey, if you've got it, spend it. Worst case scenario, nothing happens. Next up, we've got Mungo Spinecracker. So this is a Badlands Brawl, Old World Classic or Underworld Challenge, and he is a masseuse. And he will sort your players out. So whenever a player on your team suffers an injury result of KO, or a stunty KO, roll a d6 before removing them from play. On a 1, they are now casualtied as badly hurt. They don't get the SPPs though, I don't think. On a 2 to 4, nothing happens. On a 5 to 6, they stay on the pitch, not KO'd. This, I think, is really good. 80k, so you spend 50k for your KO, for a keg, right? 80k, you get a 5+ ward save against knockouts for the whole game.
I really like this one. And I think if you've got a low armor team and you know that you're going to be getting smashed a bit, for 80k, this is going to pay itself back during the game because you're going to have a few players stay on the pitch for a few extra turns. It's absolutely invaluable.
Yeah, pretty great, especially this Underworld Challenge. So you can get this on like an Underworld team. That would be really cool.
Yeah, Snotlings, Snotlings and Ogres, like, the problem is they've got really great things to be spending their inducement money on, but this is really useful. Those low armor teams, those low strength teams, when you lose players, there's nothing you can do about it until after the drive. You've normally got some spare Snotlings or whatever, but once they're off the pitch, they're off the pitch. Well, realistically, you're going to suffer like 3 to 6 knockouts a game. So there's going to be, 1 or 2 times where that knockout just turns into a stun. It's not brilliant, but I think this is reasonable. And if my opponent was like, right, I'm going to take Mungo, I'd be like, okay, I get where you're going with this. 5+ ward save against KOs is excellent. Like, that's going to come up. I like it. It's not amazing.
I just love the idea of like an orc chiropractor. Like, I just think that's fantastic. Called Spinecracker. You're just like, yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah. Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah. All right, now we've got a couple of big boys here. So this is Think Defixer. Now, this is the one that everyone's really heard about. So Think Defixer, 90k, Badlands Brawl or Underworld Challenge. So the teams you'd expect. You got it, boss. Once per game, when your team uses a bribe, you may re-roll the d6 to see if the bribe works. So once per game, you re-roll a bribe, and you pass Argue the Calls on a 5 or 6. For 90k. This is really interesting, and we see a lot of this kicking around in the community where people are like, do I take a couple of bribes, or do I take do I take this and this, or do I take Think Defixer instead? Because actually, if you've got the bribery and corruption rule, you get to re-roll a roll of a 1 when you fail a bribe, I think, or argue the call, one of the two. So actually, it's a really good combo, and you get to argue the call on a 5 or 6. So I think Think is excellent, and this is the one I think you see mentioned.
Yeah, I can see why. Like, this is just really consistent, and it's going to do the thing that your game plan is, built around. Like, if you're taking a lot of bribes in Bad Lads Brawl, like half-price bribes, you have a whole bunch of them with a whole bunch of secret weapons, then you will get use out of this on all aspects. Like, you will be arguing the call a lot. Your bribes, you'll probably fail one, in which case you can re-roll it, and you're really unlikely to ever fail. So, yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, think is proper.
It's a lot of money, but I think it's worth it. I think you get the use out of it. Because, I mean, if you're saving one bribe, you're already saving 50k off of that.
Yeah, and
it's
I think
40k to...
Yeah, if you work your roster out well, it's worth trying to squeeze it in somewhere if you're stacking up those secret weapons.
Yeah, I think Defixer is a good one. Shieland Charlatan, available to any team for 90k. During the pre-game sequence after step 4 but before step 5, except on the third Tuesday of the month, randomly select D3 players on your team that are eligible to play during this game. These players have been approached by Charlatan, and his interest is having a noticeable effect on their attitude. So during the pre-game, D3 random players. Until the end of the game, each selected player gains the pro skill. However, at the start of step 3 of the post-game sequence, roll a d6 for each of these players, unless they suffered and did not resolve, unless they died. On a roll of a 1, that player starts acting very up themselves, and they gain Loner 2+ forever. On a roll of 2 to 5, nothing exciting happens. On a roll of a 6, they keep pro without having to spend SPP, but their current value goes. So D3 players get pro. D3 random players get pro. They get pro. And they get pro for the game. Why do we not see this more?
That's really good.
Because that's not bad.
It's really good for the value, especially when you compare it back to the Professor at 130k. You're like, well, 90k, you get 3 pros. Yeah, you are running a risk that at the end of this, you've accidentally given 3 people Loner.
Loner 2+, yeah.
So you can imagine playing an OWA team and just making sure that everyone who didn't have Loner now has it as well. But again, if you roll a 6, you get to keep it, and 90k is a bit more affordable than 130k for 3 skills and a chance.
Best case scenario, Renegades, D3, all 3 big guys all end up with pro after game 1. That's it. I'm banking. That's going to happen. That is going to happen to somebody somewhere. It's going to
happen to someone, and the opponent's going to be walking out the door going, I need new dice.
Horrific. Look, I mean, you could be spending 90k for a random player to have pro.
But that's okay. I do that.
Pro is useful.
Yeah, it's always useful. Especially like on a big guy. Like you could even... No, I was going to say you could want this on vampires, but it's pretty easy to get pro on them naturally, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a bad situation, if your zombie gets pro, but then actually that's a blocking skill at that point, and every now and again that 4+ pickup is going to have a 3+ reroll on it. That's again quite useful. A Nobbler or a Snotling gets it. Well, actually that 3+ might come in handy with just a free 2-die up block or a ball pickup or something that you don't need.
I think having it increase the team value on this is a little bit... That makes it less nice on those kind of teams. Like, you probably don't want your Snotling with pro because it's kind of inflating the team value, isn't it?
As if the player had chosen a primary skill. So 20k, it's fine.
Yeah, that's good.
I would take a pro Nobbler for 35k. Like, I'm okay with that. That's cool.
Oh yeah, I miss the chosen primary. Yeah, that would be like chosen double secondary or something, which would be
brutal. Yeah. But no, I think like on an ogre team, this is great. Ogres with pro, fantastic. Nobblers with pro, fantastic. I like this. I think this is good. It's not as good as potentially some other stuff, but I'm really hoping that as we go into this next league at our club, some of this kind of periphery gear gets used, because we've all been in that match where I'm like, right, I got 90k, I guess I'm taking a keg, and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
I've got 90k. All right, let's take the pro guy. Like, let's
And
see.
if you're in a league if you're running a team and you know you're going to be running heavy on inducements, like games 1, 2, and 3, because that's the way you're running it, this is not a bad way of going. I'm going to consistently take this. I'm going to try and get some skill ups, just get through games 1, 2, and 3 until I don't need 250k of inducements, and just sort of to go with the skilling up approach.
What do we reckon to this one versus the journeyman one? Is this better?
I think I prefer the journeyman one.
The journeyman one's fun and works on multiple players in theory.
Yeah. I think I like that one more. It kind of kickstarts you a little bit more and it's a catch up.
Yeah.
I think in a league these would be good to like award teams. Like
Yes.
maybe you have like achievements or something within the league to work towards, and if you do that, you unlock this for your next game, just like one game for free.
Or a great underdog bonus for someone joining sort of
Underdog
few rounds in.
bonuses. If you've lost 2 games, then actually you get this guy for a game. Like there's some really interesting catch up angles there. I think Ben, you called it there. Actually, yeah, this could be quite good for, you know, halfway through the league. The teams in the bottom half of the league, they all get the pro guy, they all get the journeyman guy, you know, something just to help their team boost up a bit. It's interesting, really interesting. That is all of the coaching stuff. And I read Death Zone cover to cover when I got it because I was super excited, and then I just moved on with my life. I didn't even consider it again. I knew about the mutation dude because Gary mentioned it, which I thought was pretty cool, and think Defixer he's always kind of talked about. But the other ones I'd never really looked at, never really considered. And it's good to have options. Carrie Cold Steel, 50k. Do you take a keg or do you take a weak Amazon for a turn? Like, you know, it's interesting. Some of them not so good. Some of them are pretty useful, and I like it. And when it comes to inducements, it is kind of free money. So it is a case of, do I take an apothecary or do I take a chance to level up my team? And
it's good to have more options in that pot.
Yeah.
When you have inducements, you do, particularly if you're on a team and you're going to have them more than once in a league and once running through, it is nice to have a different option depending on your opponent and go, well, for this guy, I'm going to try and do this. For that, I'm going to get squashed. I need to bring a star in. Otherwise, it's going to be horribly painful.
Yeah. Actually, this matchup isn't too bad, so I can afford to spend that 90k and see if I can get pro on a couple of guys, and maybe I'll swing it on my big guy for the game anyway, and that'll be a massive boon. Because it would be like, I love it. I think this is really good.
And it's all a bit more thematic and a bit more fun.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, more
doesn't
fun.
always have to be to win games if it can just be for fun.
And I think that element of like, there's a few of these that are going to help your team in the long run, makes it totally worth it. And I want to have a proper chat with you guys about this in the future, because I think with Blood Bowl 2020 more than ever, I don't know if winning is all that important. And we'll talk about it at a different podcast.
That's a whole episode, yeah.
That is. I do think there's a lot of times where actually losing the game but building your team is the right decision, and some of these guys will play into that really nicely. Before we wrap up, I was going to say any favourites, but I think we kind of covered that. These ones, didn't we?
Yeah, Journeyman one for me, hands down. Love it.
Journeyman.
And I think this is very much more focused on league. I think there's a couple of them you could take for a tournament, but for most of them,
yeah,
if you do tournamenting, there is a better way to spend that last bit of the roster money.
You can min-max the cash, can't you? And just be like, well, I can take this, I can take this. No, wicked. Right, guys, anything else, anything more for Blood Bowl this week?
I think that's about it.
No.
I'm
going to run Skaven in the new league coming up.
I saw.
I dug out my old yellow-coated team, so hopefully this weekend I can get some paint and finish them off.
Fantastic. I'm super excited to get that league kicking off. Could try and film some games there, because I think we might as well, because it might be really fun. But just getting that story brewing is going to be really cool. Right. Wonderful. Guys, thank you very much for joining me, for hanging out and talking to Blood Bowl. I think we'll bid adieu. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay, right. We'll wrap up there, guys. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking. That's the wrong mouse. There we go. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to help support the channel even further, please like and subscribe, or come join us on our Patreon. We have early access to content. We get loads of feedback from you guys, and we try and do competitions as much as we can. Or you can get yourself some Bonehead Podcast merch on our Spreadshirt site. So if you want to support a team, especially for the Bonehead Championship, you can pick up a shirt, a mug, things like that. It all helps support the channel, and we really appreciate it. Anyway, links below. Thank you very much. Happy blocking.